Welcome back to Outriders. In this video I want to talk to you about exactly what happens when you reach challenge tier 15 in expeditions. So I'm going to give you the simple nutshell answer: nothing. That's exactly what happens when you reach tier 15 in this game. Basically, for those of you that don't know, once you complete the story in this game, you go to a place called Outriders Camp, you start expeditions, which is the end game. You start at tier 1, your world tier becomes completely irrelevant for that portion of the game. Your character level and everything goes out the window, because you'll stay at level 30 forever, but you go into an expedition, tier 1, you manage to get, let's say, a silver time. You do it quite quick, because the expeditions are purely based on times. They're like speedrun sort of missions. You go through tier 1, and you get a silver time. That allows you to start playing tier 2. But your gear that is dropping will be level 31, so you'll have to get a decent enough build to progress to actually being able to complete tier 2. Then from tier 2 to tier 3, exactly the same thing. Then from tier 3 to tier 4, the same thing. And it carries on being the exact same thing over and over and over again, all the way up until tier 15. As you are progressing, it will get tougher and tougher, because some of the tiers, you go up from, I don't know, for an example, I can't remember exactly. So as an example, from tier 9 to tier 10, there will be a 2 level gap between the enemies and yourself. Your loot will be 2 levels higher. It will always drop at the same level the enemies are. So if the enemies are level 45, your gear is dropping at 45. It goes up to 50 in terms of the enemy level and the loot level, but nothing ever changes. You are simply running a tier, doing expeditions over and over again to get bits of loot, and then you find a good build with that loot. You carry on leveling it up through using materials all the way up until tier 15. There are two ways of getting loot. You will get what we call a pity chest. It'll be a little chest before you go back into the beginning area, or if you abandon, it will be to the right hand side next to the drop pod, or in between the drop pod you can see and the crafting area. You open that chest, you get a couple of drops. Depending how far you've got, you might get quite a few drops, but they're typically always blue and purple. Sometimes you will be lucky enough to get a legendary. But then you progress through the tiers, and what they do is, as you get to a certain tier, can't remember which one it is, you will no longer be able to advance a tier by getting a bronze time. It will go up to silver and gold. So you have to push a silver. Your build needs to be a very, very good, efficient build. And I mean, if you're using Devastator, you're going to struggle, especially if you are playing solo, because I believe, and I think there are quite a few people that agree with me, Devastator is the weakest class in the entire game. It's the hardest to play solo. So you get to the tier that you're only allowed to complete with silver and gold. You're absolutely grinding, you're sweating your nut off, and you manage to get a silver time. You progress through the tiers. You get to tier 14, and what happens at tier 14 is they go, you are no longer allowed the silver time. The only way to progress from 14 to 15 is by smashing that gold time. So you do that, and you get yourself to tier 15, and then you unlock the big bad boy, the Eye of the Storm, which is going to cost you 40,000 drop pod resources to enter. If you can farm through 13, 14 and 15, the drop pod resources will come in fairly quick. So it's not going to take long. I don't agree with having a 40,000 drop pod resource cost, just purely because there's nothing extra from any of the expeditions that require drop pod resources to play. They're simply just different expeditions. They just slap the minimum tier and the drop pod resource cost to actually enter. And bear in mind, if you disconnect or anything at all, you don't get a refund on your resources. So if you play Eye of the Storm, you disconnect because the servers go down, you log back in, that's 40k resources gone. But you jump into the Eye of the Storm, and bear in mind the developer said absolutely everything in this game is able to be completed solo. Well, Eye of the Storm is physically impossible to complete solo. For a gold time, you can still complete it solo, but a gold time is physically impossible. There is no way to do it. I've seen people using trainers, so they are cheating, and they still can't get a gold time solo. Group is easiest because you go into this very small arena, you have the exact same boss from the end of the story, because, you know, they set up expeditions with the marketing strategy of not being the same as areas from the story, but they never mention the enemies. The enemies are all exactly the same. There's actually 2 story bosses in these expeditions, one being the very final one that you can find in Eye of the Storm, and another one is, I believe it's Frontline. There is a boss called Moloch, and you take him down during the story too. So you get to tier 15, you unlock Eye of the Storm, you pay your 40k drop pod resources, you go in there, you have to take down 3 obelisks in a very small area, whilst taking down a lot of annoying enemies, and then you get the final boss being Yagak, and he just seems to be a variant of himself, so basically like an Avengers clone, and you take him down, and that's Eye of the Storm complete. There's no progression in Eye of the Storm, you're just in one small arena, and it's 3 of the obelisks which are used throughout a lot of the expeditions, so it's just like copy-paste sort of stuff. And after you've done that, voila, you're done. There's absolutely nothing else to do. So you hit tier 15, which is recommended to be played in a group, although it can be played solo depending on your build, and there's literally nothing else. I don't know what to say to you. You're literally just playing the same expeditions, but you've got level 50 gear. There's absolutely no endgame gear or weapons in the game at all. You can take a blue or a purple that you've upgraded, or even a legendary. You can take that from the story all the way through to level 50, to tier 15. You can use the same weapon and the same bits of gear the entire way through the game. That's story and endgame. There is nothing that changes. But yeah, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know your thoughts and stuff about this in the comments, and if you can add anything. Do you actually believe there is stuff that changes when you hit tier 15? Like, is there anything you've experienced different to me? But what we're going to do is leave the video there. I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed it.